17th of November 2020. This is the project management lecture of VH7. And today we're going to be talking about key performance indicators and their relationships. You can also call them KPIs. Okay, those are variables that measure the process performance and KPIs are important to measure or explain process variability. Okay. A process turns an input into an output and this output is the input for the next process, and so on and so forth. So basically what you have is you have a process, a value stream, you insert some input. Imagine you are inserting some aluminium, okay, aluminium into a foundry, a gießerei, okay, and then the output is some part that has been casted, let's say a motor block. But this motor block is again the input how should I put it? This motor block is the input for another process, not in the foundry, but in assembly. Okay, this is the foundry. This is assembly of the motor, and you get as an output you get a mounted motor with all its parts and gears and stuff. Okay, and then again the motor is the input of another process, which is the assembly of the car. You get an output, which is a car, and then you get the sales process. This car is the input of the sales process, and then the output is the car with a customer in it, and after that you get another process of maintenance of the car, so that you get not only a customer but you get a happy customer, and so on and so forth. And then you scrap the car and then it all starts again. So basically processes are networks. They are very complex spirals, okay? Basically, they are all interconnected. Also, if we do not know how to explain the variability of the process, this relationship is present. Okay, that's why we talk about a network of processes, or as we have seen before, a supply chain network, supply chain complex network. Okay, so as we have seen already, this is just an introduction, when we measure a process, we can measure the input, the process itself, and or the output. So for instance, when we try to lose weight, we can measure the input, which is the calorie intake per day. Okay, and these are the KPIs. The calorie intake per day. We can measure the process, the number of minutes of sport we do every day, or we can measure the weight itself. And depending what we measure, and this is the important thing, depending on what we measure, we get different process owner behavior. Okay, and this is important. So our management system that is going to be measuring performance in order to explain variability is going to guide process owner behavior. And this is what we want. We want to have the correct behavior. Because if we measure the calories per day, the behavior is going to be to start a diet. If we measure the minutes of sport we do today, every day, we're going to get a behavior of going to the gym. And if we measure the output, we're going to get a measure of Weight Watchers, a behavior of Weight Watchers. Okay. So the behavior derives from the management system. can think about this as with a football or a soccer game, okay, like in sports. Depending on how we measure success, we get different behavior by the players. Okay. Depending on how we measure success, we get different behavior by the process owners. And this is very, very, very important, okay? Any questions so far? So the conclusion is that by deciding through our management system how and how often we measure processes, if we measure the input, the process, or the output, and process performance, we are already deciding and preconditioning organizational behavior. Okay. Preconditioning organizational behavior. So there are, in fact, there are good and there are bad management systems for our organization. Just we need to find out how do we measure, how often do we measure, and what do we measure in order to get the best out of our organization. Any questions? Habt ihr Fragen über diese Einführung?
Hallo, ich habe kurz eine Frage.
Ja.
Was war jetzt nochmal dieses Preconditioning Organization Behavior? Also,
Ja, wenn eine Führungskraft entscheidet, was gemessen wird, wie es gemessen wird und wie oft es gemessen wird, das Verhalten der Mitarbeiter wird konditioniert, wird dadurch beeinflusst. Bevor die Führungskraft irgendwas macht, allein die Entscheidung, dass was gemessen wird, wie oft gemessen wird und wie es gemessen wird, entscheidet schon über das Verhalten oder beeinflusst das Verhalten der Mitarbeiter. Das heißt, eine Precondition. Bevor irgendwas passiert, es ist schon bereits beeinflusst.
Okay, danke schön.
Gerne. Gibt es noch Fragen? Okay, so we face now the challenge. We observe now a process, let's say a factory, okay? And there are a bunch of things going on in there. There are a lot of processes inside. There are a lot of machines, a lot of people. And on the first day that we step in, our boss asked the question, please provide me with a list, okay? Provide me with the most important KPIs to create my management system. So the question is, what are the most important KPIs to explain the process, a factory or a value stream? What are the most important KPIs to explain the process? Please find out. And the premise is that we don't have quantitative information. Very often we need to decide this without being able to gather numbers, quantitative information about the process. So this is a problem. We need to decide what are the most important key performance indicators to measure the process, but we don't have time, or it's too expensive, or before we start, we need to make a decision of what are the most important KPIs to explain the process, but we cannot measure. So what do we do? Okay, without being able to gather quantitative information, what do we do? Okay, so this is a rather tricky question. And I'm going to try to answer this by giving you some tools to solve this challenge. Okay. So the first thing you need to do is to first step. Well, you can call before. Let me title this. We call this KPI heat map. Okay. What we are going to be creating is a heat map. KPI heat map. That's the name of the method. Okay. So when we create a KPI heat map, what do we do? Of any process, of course, this is related to a process. Okay, so we have let's say a factory or a value stream or a machine. It doesn't matter. Okay, we have a process, and attached to every process, we have a process owner. Attached to every process, we have a process owner. Okay, factory manager, for instance. So when we have our process and our process owner defined, we have decided where we are going to create our management system and what do we want to measure. So the first step is to decide what is the process we want to understand. Okay, once we have decided what is the process that we want to understand, what we do is we gather a priori. Let's say we take the factory, okay, relevant people that are related to the process in a meeting. Okay. So people that are a priori important to the factory process are gathered together in a meeting. Usually people important to the process of the factory, I don't know, okay, the production manager, the logistics manager, people reporting to the factory manager, I don't know, okay, quality manager, suppliers, I don't know, people that are important to the process, and all get together in a factory in a meeting. So this is a team of relevant people for the process. All get together and they create a list of relevant for the process KPIs. Okay, so basically we create a list in this workshop, in this meeting. This list has some relevant information. Okay, so it's a list with 5 columns. One, two, three, 4, and 5. And then the list of the KPIs, okay, KPI 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bam, bam, bam. Okay, So these are the KPIs. And then we have 5 relevant characteristics for each KPI. So what are these 5 characteristics? Can you follow? Any questions so far? So what are these 5 characteristics? So in the list, we have number 1, the name of the KPI. Examples, lead time, ppm, parts per million, or mean time to repair, mean time between failures, or EPI, or I don't know, cash flow, return on investment, return on sales, whatever you want to think about. Okay. The second step is, and of course you need to be understanding the nature of these KPIs. So the second step is how to measure them. We measure in time, we measure in money, we measure in money per, so you need to describe the units, okay? Euros per produced unit, or you measure in percentage, or I don't know, whatever. However you measure the KPI. The third thing is who is the process owner. Okay, and here the process owner is the most important individual in the process, who has the most relevant role within the value creation. Okay. There is never one single person that is solely responsible for one process. Okay. There are probably many people taking care of many things simultaneously, but there is usually one person that is responsible for the process. Okay, responsible meaning response able. Somebody able to give a response to any challenge. Okay. So, verantwortlich ist jemand, der in der Lage ist, eine Antwort zu geben auf eine Herausforderung. Okay. The fourth thing we measure is how often, or the fourth thing we are going to say is how often do we measure? And this is just a frequency, okay? If we measure daily or weekly or monthly or something, okay, whatever. And the fifth thing we measure we decide is the limits of the process limits beginning and end. So where does it start and where does it finish? Because as we said before, processes are all interchanging networks, and sometimes it is difficult to say when something is finished. Okay, so when is the process finished? By the casted motor block, or is it finished when we assemble the process? So usually it's made, this decision is made when we have physical barriers, okay? Usually it's better though to decide based on information flow barriers. And this is something that it's just a matter of experience, okay? So anyway, any questions so far? So these are different people. Relevant to the process, and they gather together to precisely to have different opinions about the process, okay? Not just to have one opinion. Anyway, are we cool? Any questions? Okay, then we make a little break, and 10 minutes we can continue. If you don't get an invitation from me, please be online in 10 minutes at this address, because I don't know if the software is working, okay? Thank you. This list, we can continue, but let me give you one example of the list. Of a list, okay? Let's say you gather with the most relevant people in the factory, and you say your KPI, your first KPI is lead time. So your first KPI, then you have your name, lead time, in Deutsch Durchlaufzeit, how to measure, well, lead time is measured by the work in progress divided by the output. Let me put a little star here because this is very important. I'm going to go down, down, down to the page. This is called Little's Law. Lead time equals lead time measured in time equals the work in progress, or WIP, measured in parts divided by the output of the process divided in parts or units per time unit. So that when you simplify the measures, parts eliminates, and then you get time out. Okay, this is super, super important. Okay, in order, for instance, in order for lead time to go down with a constant output, you need your work in progress, your Umlaufbestand, to go down. So whenever you have a constant output, if your work in progress, if your Umlaufbestand goes down, your lead time goes down. Die Durchlaufzeit goes runter. Okay. If you want your lead time to go down with constant work in progress, then it means that you need to increase your output. Okay, so in a condition of market expansion, you will try to keep your inventory constant, and you would try to increase your output. So this is called market. This is the strategy in a market expansion. You want to sell more, but you want to keep your inventory under control. In a market contraction, you want to reduce your inventory while you keep your output constant. Market contraction. So depending on how the market behaves, little law helps you keep your process under control. This is very important. Okay, so you need to understand this law in detail. It looks easy, but well, we will see some implications of it today later on. Okay. And this is true for any process, for any level of complexity of the process. So it's true for a factory, it's true for a value stream, it's also true for just one machine. Okay. So the third question is, who is the process owner? Okay. In this case, we have said we take care of the factory, so this is a factory manager. How often? And this is just an example. Okay, we measure once a week. And what we measure is the factory. Okay, so we measure the lead time of the whole factory. Who is the process owner? How often and what? So the second KPI we can think of is a cash flow. Okay, cash flow is input money minus the output money. Going to make 2 stars here. Cash flow is also a very important. If this is your business, okay, like your money cash machine, this is a business. You are spending money, cash out of money, and you're making money. Okay. You're losing money, you're spending money, and you're making money. So and you want your cash flow, this is your delta, to be always bigger than 0. Remember following formula: CF IM TY M. Does anybody know what this means? This means cash flow is more important than your mother. Okay, so if cash flow is negative, then you're dead. You don't have a business anymore. You don't own the business anymore. The bank owns the business. So always keep an eye on the cash flow. Who is responsible for the cash flow? The factory manager, a priori, okay? We measure this once a month, and we measure the cash flow of the whole factory. Third KPI we measure is the quality production. This is measured in parts per million. This is the number of errors produced divided by the total production. Okay. The responsible is the production manager, reporting to the factory manager. We measure this every day, and we have a process boundary, which is the assembly. The fourth is the delivery rate. Okay, and delivery rate is the number of wrong deliveries divided by a total deliveries. Who is responsible? The logistics manager. We measure this once every day, and we measure this at the docking station at the end of the process. And the fifth step of the process is the inventory, WIP, work in progress, or the Umlaufbestand. Are units. Responsible for this is the supervisor. We measure this once every shift, and we measure this at the end of assembly. And we could go on and on and on with this list. Okay, so this list could be like very long. We can measure the EPI, which we're gonna be looking at in a couple days. We measure EPI in time units. It's a measure of flexibility of a process. This is being reported by the logistics manager, and it takes once a month. And this is about the factory. Okay, or we can measure the change over time, Rüstzeit. COT is measured in time, is measured by the supervisor, and is measured once every day in the assembly, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you get the nature of this list. Hello? Okay, well, once we have the list, I get no questions. So the first thing is we decide what is the process. The second is we gather the people, and we create a list with the process limits. And the third step is we create the heat map. So in order to do so, we just take a piece of paper or a blackboard or something like that, and then we list these KPIs. Let's say lead time, cash flow, PPMs, delivery rate, and work in progress. So we repeat basically the same list as we had before. And then we repeat this horizontally. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. If you don't follow, please ask questions, okay? Remember, we don't have any data of any kind describing these KPIs. We just have our knowledge of the process, okay? So the next step is that we shadow the diagonal. Here we will not write anything. We shadow the diagonal. And then we ask following question, okay? How does KPI sub E influence KPI sub J? We answer this question with a 0 if there is no influence, with a 1 if there is a slight influence, and with a 2 if there is strong influence. And we go line by line. Okay. So let's start. How does lead time, because we go line by line, how does lead time influence cash flow? This is this line, okay? How does lead time influence cash flow? So I am going to 1 to 2. How does lead time influence cash flow? Well, how does the first line I will do slowly. Lead time influence cash flow. Well, lead time, we know, is the work in progress divided by the output. So if the lead time decreases, it means that either the work in progress is decreasing or the output is increasing. In both cases, this means that the cash flow increases. So there is a strong influence, and I'm going to put here A2, okay? 2. Strong influence. How does lead time influence parts per million? How does lead time influence quality? Can you follow the argument? Because later on in the exam, if I ask this, you will need to be explaining exactly what I just said, okay? The lead time is WIP divided by output. This means that lead time goes down, implies that the WIP goes down or the output goes up. This implies that the cash flow goes up. So, and you will need to be writing this down. How does lead time influence parts per million? Let's say quality. And this argument is also very important. If we have a process, let's say a process step 1 delivering to a process step 2, delivering to a process step 3, and we have inventory in the middle, WIP and WIP. And let's say we create a mistake in, we have the first process steps creates a mistake. And number 3, in order to correct it, number 3 is reporting the mistake back in what is called a quality feedback loop. So number 1 is creating a mistake, and until it gets to number 3, we don't notice the mistake. So the feedback loop takes longer. It takes longer to notice the quality problem with longer lead times. Okay. So if lead time goes up, this means either that the WIP is going up or the output is going down. In both cases, quality is going down. So this means that ppm is going up, meaning that the correlation is strong. The influence is strong. If you have questions, please ask, okay? Otherwise, I just continue. What is the correlation, or what is the relationship, what is the influence of lead time to delivery rate? Well, how does lead time influence delivery rate? Well, this seems if lead time equals WIP divided by output, if lead time goes down, it means that the WIP goes down. It means that I can be more flexible to customer demand changes. If I have less inventory, I can react faster. As a result, my delivery rate will go up. So if lead time goes down, delivery rate will go up. Delivery rate we have defined the delivery rate as the number of error deliveries. I'm going to define it differently. Not wrong deliveries, but okay deliveries. So that it is positive, it goes up. And the last one of the first line is, how does lead time influence the WIP? And this is just a no-brainer. Maybe I should take not WIP, I should take changeover. I'm going to take change over time. Okay. So how does lead time influence change over time? Lead time is WIP divided by the output. If lead time goes down, means that the WIP goes down, and it has no influence on change over time. So this is 0. Okay. Any questions so far? As I said, always each relationship like that. In a way, if you wish, we are measuring, we are reading all the time, we are reading it like this. Okay. Let's say line by line and always like this. How does KPI Y influence KPI J? Any questions? Any questions? Gibt es irgendwelche Fragen? Ich wiederhole es auf Deutsch. Wie beeinflusst die Durchlaufzeit den Rest der KPIs? Okay. Wie beeinflusst die Durchlaufzeit den Cashflow? Durchlaufzeit und Cashflow. Wenn die Durchlaufzeit gleich den Umlaufbestand geteilt durch die Ausbringung, wenn die Durchlaufzeit kleiner ausfällt oder runtergeht, dann geht den Bestand runter oder geht den Output hoch vom Prozess. In beiden Fällen geht den Cashflow hoch. Ich verkaufe entweder mehr, weil mein Output hochgeht, oder mein Bestand geht runter und mein gebundenes Kapital geht runter. Deshalb geht mein Cashflow hoch. Wie beeinflusst, und dann packe ich ein 2 hier oben. Wie beeinflusst die Durchlaufzeit die Qualität? Wenn ich 3 Prozesse habe, 3 Prozessschritte habe und ich mache einen Fehler beim ersten Prozessschritt, wenn die Durchlaufzeit lang ist, dann dauert es länger, dass der Prozess Nummer 3 sich meldet mit dem Fehler. Das sollte intuitiv sein. Das heißt, wenn die Durchlaufzeit sehr hoch ist, dann das Qualitätsproblem wird später erkannt. Das heißt, wenn die Durchlaufzeit hochgeht, geht der WIP hoch, also der Bestand geht hoch, und deshalb kann ich den Fehler später erkennen und somit gehen die PPMs hoch. Okay. Deshalb kann man nicht reden, ob über eine Korrelation mit diesen zwei 1 oder 0. Es geht um einen Einfluss. Okay? So, Beziehung Nummer 3, wie beeinflusst die Durchlaufzeit die Delivery Rate? Wenn die Durchlaufzeit runtergeht, dann geht der Bestand runter, dann kann ich besser, flexibler agieren auf die Bedarfsänderungen vom Kunde und somit geht mein Delivery Rate hoch. Und wie beeinflusst die Durchlaufzeit mein Changeover Time? Es hat keinen Einfluss, weil die Changeover Time hat nur mit der Maschine zu tun. So, in die Prüfung, wenn ich sowas abfrage, dann gebe ich euch eine Liste von Kennzahlen, 4 oder 5 Kennzahlen, und ich lasse euch alle Beziehungen erklären. Okay? Das heißt, wenn die Liste 5 mal 5 ist, dann sind 20 Beziehungen, weil die Diagonale schraffiert ist. Okay? So, alle Beziehungen müssen erklärt werden in Detail. Das heißt, in the exam, if I give you a list of KPIs and I ask you to perform a KPI heat map, then you need to write down all the relationships, okay? All the relationships. And every relationship that is not correctly explained, and I am more concerned about the explanation, not about if it's a 0, a 1, or a 2, okay? If I don't care if the explanation is correct and you have a 1 instead of a 2, it's correct again, but the explanation must be correct. The logic must be correct. You need to show that you understand. That's why I am going to ask you, we will continue with this exercise next week, but I'm going to ask you to fulfill this heat map, okay? So, bitte macht die Übung am Wochenende oder der Rest der Woche, diese Liste nochmal zu befüllen. Ich werde nächste Woche das schneller machen, aber ich möchte, dass ihr drüber nachdenkt. So, okay, bitte jede Beziehung, wie beeinflusst Cashflow Lead Time, wie beeinflusst Cashflow PPMs und so weiter. Okay? So please go through all the relationships in this in the next week. Next week we will finish this heat map list. Okay? Well, then I will upload the videos and send you the PDF per email, and hope you have a nice rest of the week. Bye-bye.